One of the things I like about the Beatles is how quotable they are. And that's why I watch their interviews over and over again. And I just got done watching Paul's latest interview, like a few times, the interview where he sits down with the director of the Man on the Run documentary, Morgan Neville. It's a pretty good interview. Paul gets a little bit feisty in a couple places, and he's not talking about the same old stuff. We're not hearing the same old stories over and over again. Yeah, that's there a couple times, but he's a little bit different here. At least he is, in my opinion, because he's mainly talking about like the 70s and the documentary itself, and that whole time period. And he says that, for him, the theme of that time period and of the documentary was there was a couple of them, like growing up, freedom, learning how to not be so uptight. And he says he takes responsibility for some of the crazy madcap things that, that they did back then. And then he talks about Linda, and he says that something that she told him, really stuck with him. It's it's allowed. It's allowed. And you would think that, Paul McCartney, it's allowed. You can kind of do whatever you want, but you got to think that because this stuck with him, it's like a new concept, basically, is what he's saying. It's like maybe he was worried about, I have this instinct to do this, but these rules are over here. But she kind of freed him up to forget about some of those rules even more and just kind of, Paul, just to do what you want. And then the subject of Paul's song, Mary Had a Little Lamb, comes up. And Paul was pushing back on the critics and the naysayers of the day by saying, you know what, I look at it this way. It's my life. I can do what I want. And when I heard that, I go, that's fantastic. I mean, obviously we know that about Paul. We know Paul doesn't like to be told what to do, but, it looked to me like he was sort of embracing, that idea in that interview, because he kind of says it with an attitude.
Okay, it's my life and I can do what I want.
So I watched that clip over and over again. It's I love hearing Paul say, it's my life. I can do what I want. I love it. So freedom and doing what you want is sort of a theme here with this interview. And I think Paul is embracing it. And there was another quote in there where he says, with regards to his songwriting, it's I like making stuff up. It makes me feel free. So I don't know if Paul's just embracing, being free more or loving that concept more. Maybe he's setting aside critics a lot more these days. Maybe, freedom is on his mind a lot more, because it does look to me like he's been on a bit of a journey over the past few years, maybe going a little bit deeper inside based on some of the stuff that we've been getting from him, like the Eyes of the Storm book. He's looking back on those times, and just, allowing himself to, get more personal with us. Just like with the Man on the Run documentary, it's very personal, and allowing himself to look, not in the best light. And in some cases, I mean, he even says that here. He's I'm a little embarrassed or whatever. So, he's okay with that. So don't worry about that, Paul. This is kind of what Linda was telling him. It's don't worry about that, Paul. It's allowed. Just do that. So maybe, who knows? I mean, it can take us forever to really adopt that thing and let go of old mindsets here. So maybe by the time I get into my 80s, I can do the same thing. And so obviously Paul's on a journey to kind of go deeper inside and to give us a little bit more, because, it's kind of reflected in that single that he just dropped, The Days We Left Behind, where Paul seems to me like he is allowing himself to be more personal with us, express himself in new ways, and not worrying about what people have to say, allowing himself to be a lot more free. So maybe we'll see more of that, on his upcoming LP, The Boys of Dungeon Lane, because it certainly does look like he's going in that direction, okay, on his journey in his later years. And when I was watching that, I was reminded of the French Impressionist, the artist Claude Monet, in Claude Monet's later years. Because Monet, when he got older, he developed cataracts and his eyesight became somewhat diminished, like an artist with diminished eyesight, sort of like a singer with some vocal issues, okay? So Claude Monet, he didn't travel so much in his later years, and so his subject matter became somewhat limited. He would paint just his garden, mainly, the lily pond and the water lilies, the same bridge and the same trees around. Mainly this was his subject matter. So he had to find new ways of expressing himself, and had to find new things. And how do I paint the same thing over and over again? So he played with light, he played with texture, he just played, moved it around, and so his work became a lot more abstract rather than impressionistic. And so it was just, it freed him to express himself in new ways. Like these limitations kind of made him go outside of his comfort zone. And this later body of work, I think a lot of people prefer the later body of work. And I heard this curator talking about Monet's, later work, like those, the water lilies, these huge canvases, these huge water lilies. And he says, the curator was saying, I just like to sit there in the room with these water lilies, these very abstract, water lilies where they could be up, you could turn those paintings every which way and it would still look good, okay? Because that's not the point. The point of those paintings are maybe to make you feel something. And this is what he's doing. He's immersing himself in there because he likes all the light, all the different light. It's somewhat abstract, and all the different colors and the textures. It's all open to interpretation. And he says it makes him feel more free being around this art. And he says it's almost like music. And I'm going, wow, that is, this is exactly what's happening. It's just like with Paul's latest song, The Days We Left Behind, because it is somewhat impressionistic. It is poetry. I mean, it's not well defined. We can feel it because it is like a very simple song. It's different textures here. It's lilting all over the place. Yeah, Paul does have some diminished, capabilities in his later work on his journey here. But I think the work is more interesting, more emotional, more evocative. You don't really have to find exactly, we can look and see, what does Paul mean by this line? What does Paul mean by that line? But for me, I like to just say, I just like to feel it. I like to feel the vibe. It's like, yeah, we get the idea of where you're coming from, Paul. I don't really feel like there's a ton of hidden meanings in here. These are probably meaningful lyrics to Paul, but because they're a little abstract and it's all a little bit blurred, and we can fill in all the gaps with our own feelings. And I feel like we can have a deeper connection, with Paul's artwork, just like this one curator had a deeper connection with Monet's artwork, because not everything is spelled out. Not everything is spelled out for you. It's like, make of it what you will. Artists are emotional. And he's letting us know finally, what's going on inside of here. So just like Monet did, it's like Monet dug deeper inside and showed and just sung us a song. And Paul McCartney, he sung us a song here. And I understand that not everybody, wants to hear from an older Paul McCartney. And maybe Paul kind of knows that. And maybe that's why he was a little bit feisty in this interview here, and kind of letting everybody know with that fantastic quote. It's like, it's my life. I can do what I want. Oh my God, I just love that. I want to be Paul McCartney when I grow up. Please, pretty please. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I really and truly appreciate it. And until next time, peace and love one another. Take care.
I love to just make stuff up. It keeps me free.